Hello everybody, Steve Britton here, of course, coming to you again from my kitchen found in a secret undisclosed location somewhere in southern Alberta. And I decided I was going to do a live stream today because, well, I have been accused. Now, I said sedition, and it is sedition. I've been accused of sedition, but in actual fact, because it was in a printed medium, it's actually seditious libel. Seditious libel being sedition in print form. I'll get to that in a second. So I decided I was going to make some ginger beef. Now, ginger beef, as I am making it here, is a recipe that you will not find. I'm still getting some of the prep work done as I ran out of time. You will not find this dish served in a restaurant anywhere other than Calgary. So if you have any questions about what I'm doing as I go through the recipe, as I go through this, let me know. I'll lose the hat. By the way, the hat says, "Stop Justin." Okay, you can get the hats at the Stop Justin website. So what I'm doing here is I'm just getting some of the last ingredients prepared. I'll go through the ingredients list and then I'll get into my experience, and we'll do what I normally do, flip back and forth between the two subjects as we get this on the go. And I have no idea if this is going to work. But feel free on the YouTube side of things, you can put questions in the chat and I will see them on my computer screen here in front of me, and I can, if you want to make a comment, feel free. There is no such thing as super chats on this feed, so don't be worried about that. So some of the ingredients that you'll need. Of course, you'll need some beef. That's what I moved there. You need 6 cloves of garlic. You need a large hunk of ginger. You need green pepper, you need red pepper, and you need a carrot, a large carrot, all finely julienned. Now, I absolutely hate to julienne vegetables, so I'm not going to julienne these because it's tedious, it takes a lot of time, and the result is just as well if you... There's a trick about peeling carrots. Put it down on the cutting board and just down, away from you. So I'm going to get pretty close to julienning, but I'm not going to go and julienne the thing in the way that one would expect it to be julienned. As I said, I ran out of time before the stream started, otherwise I wouldn't be julienning. I would have had everything done by the time I went on. There we go. It's nice and sliced. We'll slice it we'll do the second layer slice again in just a second. But julienne basically means to cut in 1/8 inch squares. And I'll leave it to you to figure out how to do that, especially on something like a carrot. Once this is all done, then the fun will really begin and we'll really get this dish underway. So, but this recipe, it's deep fried ginger beef. You will not find it anywhere other than in Calgary, because the restaurants, or rather the Chinese restaurants that serve it, are all in Calgary, because it was a recipe that was invented in Calgary. So this is a purely Calgarian thing. It's not a Canadian thing. It is a Calgary thing. But it is by far one of my personal favorites whenever I go for Chinese. And now I've found a recipe on how to make this stuff, it's even better. So I consider this, it's a little tedious to make, but it's comfort food, which is always a good thing, especially when you've been accused of sedition. And I'll get to that in just a second. I want to get this carrot done first. And of course, all of this sedition stuff is stemming from the events of last Wednesday in Washington, D.C. As we all know, all hell broke loose in Washington, D.C. A bunch of people did a really dumb thing, stormed the Capitol building. It did not do them or Donald Trump any favors. I don't know how badly it hurt them. Some people are saying it did them a lot of damage. I don't think it did. I think, if anything, it made them look like a bunch of fools, which may not be the best thing. But it certainly was not a good decision, especially since 5 people died. One person was an unarmed woman who was looking in through a window, and standing behind her were 4 police officers. She was shot from the front by a Capitol Hill police officer through the glass. Now, in order for her to be shot like that, he would have had to have been shooting towards the police officers who were standing behind her. That is not a clear shot. That, in fact, is in direct contravention of every single firearms rule, firearm safety procedure that I am aware of. Because you need to know, if you know your acts and prove, acts is your safety rules and prove is to prove a firearm safe. Acts, always assume a gun is loaded, control the muzzle, which is the end the bullet comes from, trigger discipline, that's your T, and S, be sure. And that means be sure of your shot. And so you got to know what's downrange of you and beyond your target in case you miss. So those 4 police officers are very lucky that they did not get shot by friendly fire. Of course, it is absolutely tragic that 5 people lost their lives, one of which was a police officer. And there's no excuse for any of that. That's deplorable on every single level. Okay, so carrots, julienne, finely julienne. Green pepper, red pepper, finely julienne. 6 cloves of garlic, close enough to finely julienne. And some ginger, finely julienne. 1 cup of coffee and 1 glass of a mixture of ginger ale and orange juice. If you want to put vodka in with it, feel free. I prefer mine without the vodka. Vodka will give it a bit of extra kick, but there's no need, in my personal opinion, it doesn't need the vodka. I just like the refreshingness. Yes. Okay, so let me give you the overview here. Here is the tweet that started it all. Yes, this was a Twitter war. This is me posting now, do not let the left define Wednesday's event. It was a protest that got out of hand, I said. It was angry people taking things way too far. This is where it started. It was not an insurrection. It was not a coup. It was not even an attempted coup. It was not terrorism. 5 people died. Absolutely unconscionable. I don't know how more clear I can be here. And at least one, the lady looking through the windows, was 100% avoidable and 0% justified. This was Nancy, Joe, Kamala, Jim Acosta, and the rest of the leftist Democratic clique's fault. That's right, because it was Nancy Pelosi's and her ilk's fault. So that's the first of the tweets. And then it went beyond that. Here's my second one there. 5 people died. And you can see this Mason Riley person, who turns out is from Melbourne, Australia. Go figure, given what Melbourne, Australia is going through with their draconian lockdowns. Don't worry, Steve, she says. Have passed your details to both the FBI and Canadian Security Services. I have no idea who the Canadian Security Services are. They don't exist as far as I can tell. Is she talking about CSIS? I don't know. RDDC, whoever they are. Because the Stop Justin CA website you have linked to from your profile looks very suspicious considering you have defended the attempted coup in the US. Just making sure, champ. Hang on. Where did I defend an attempted coup? Exactly? The answer is nowhere. I did not defend an attempted coup because there was no attempted coup to defend. I said this before and I'll repeat myself now. A attempted coup, a coup of any kind, is a forceful takeover of the government. It's an overthrow of the government. And you don't have an attempted coup when there's no politicians in the legislature who get evacuated before you even get in there, which is exactly what should have happened. And if you want to attempt a coup, you don't go after the legislatures. You take the legislature, of course, but you need to go after the government itself because it is the government that is the body that actually runs things. In the States, it's the president, it's the Secretary of State, it's that group, the cabinet. It is not the people in the House of Representatives and the Senate. They're the guys who pass the laws, who debate and then pass laws. So that's the difference there. So as you can probably guess, I was not very impressed by this, especially since I came out swinging against this action. So I pointed this out, and it was definitely, on her part, it was definitely libel, what she did and what she said. And I said, look, I suggest you retain counsel. You're going to need it. So this went back and forth, and she completely failed to understand what I was talking about. I can't wait to see how I libeled you, she writes. Questioning you is not libel. She didn't question me. She accused me. And she wants me arrested for sedition. I know as a mediocre, privileged white male that even someone having the temerity to question you must trigger you senseless, but is not libelous. She has no clue. And I want to know, and what I would really, really like to know, is if being racist and sexist and being a racist and sexist is something that she has worked at or comes naturally for her. Because to refer to me as a white privileged male is certainly a very sexist and racist thing to say. Anyway, so there you go. There's where this whole thing comes from. It was not a coup. It was not an insurrection. It was not even an attempted coup. Okay, so let's get back to doing the ginger beef. Now, this is slightly more than a pound of flank steak. It says to use a pound of flank steak. I'm going to use a little bit more than that because I happen to like ginger beef, and it's not going to make that much of a difference. And what it says to do with this is you're going to slice this across the grain of the meat. The grain goes one way, and you're going to slice it across the grain. And because this knife is being in vegetables and only vegetables, I'm going to use the same knife. So we're going to slice across the grain. And I've got my great big electric skillet here in front of what I'm doing, and I've got that turned on. Otherwise, but as you can see what I'm doing here anyway. So we're going to slice that across the grain. So, but I'm going to, getting back to this whole political stuff as well. What is it? This is an example of how supporters of the left and so on completely fail to understand the danger they represent. Now, socialism, like, I have got this working theory that socialists in general, people who are not on the conservative side of the spectrum, they're not even sentient as far as I can tell. That's not a call to action. Don't do anything. Speaking of calls to action, I am quite sure that I have also pointed out to this lady that what she posted was in fact a call to action towards me. Because if she's going to report me to the FBI and the CSIS or whoever it is that she's reporting it to, perhaps then she's indirectly telling other people to do the same thing. They're welcome to investigate me. They're not going to find anything. They'll find a bunch of angry, they'll find a bunch of tweets of mine where probably in some of them I make a fool of myself. They'll find a website that I own called Stop Justin where it's incredibly out of date and I sell a bunch of Stop Justin merchandise, like the hat that's hanging on my fridge there. So yeah, I am not concerned. It's not the point. And one of the things that she says to me is, if you haven't done anything wrong, you've got nothing to worry about. That is the most disingenuous, asinine thing that somebody can say. If you have done nothing wrong, you should have nothing to worry about, might be true. But then again, it is a disgusting invasion and a violation of someone's rights to investigate without due cause. And there is no due cause to investigate me in this situation. So there you go. That's a point that I wanted to make regarding that. Now, I know that I have nothing to worry about. I am not concerned one way, in any way, shape, or form. But the fact is, she has posted something that is not true. Now I'm going to cut these in half, I think, because you're a little bit big. Once I get this once I get this cooking, it's going to be amazing because you're going to be able to smell it, and you won't be able to smell it. I'll be able to smell it, and the smell of this, ooh, yum. Okay, but where I'm going with this whole discussion, it's yet another example of. Let's move that to one side. It's yet another example of how the left is escalating the argument rather than, trying to lower the tone, lower the tension a little bit, and reduce the level of discussion down to a cooler level. All right, so now we're going to make, because as long as if you keep getting the escalation process going, it's like what happened in Northern Ireland during the Troubles. Side A blows up somebody's house because they don't like them. Doesn't matter if it's English or Protestant or Catholic, it doesn't matter. Side B blows up, gets angry, and for revenge, blows up 2 Side A's houses. So Side A blows up 3 the other side's houses. So they blow up 4. You see where this is going. And it gets totally out of control very, very quickly. And what you've got is one side that is flexing its muscles. It basically says, we've got absolute control right now, and they've got almost absolute control. For absolute control, they'd actually have to have a supermajority in the Senate. They do not. All it would take is one senator on the Democrat side to switch allegiances or vote what they would decide as the wrong way, and they wouldn't get anywhere with it. Okay, so we're going to combine all the ingredients in the following ingredients in the bowl to make the batter. 1 egg, 1 cup of water, 1 1/4 cups of cornstarch. We'll get to that in a second. 3 tablespoons of flour, 1/2 of a teaspoon of white pepper. I'm going to just use whatever I've got. And 2 to 3 cups of oil for frying the beef in. Okay, so let's get this done. Oh, look at that, one-handed and everything. Got a bit of shell in my egg. Okay, there we go. I'm the only one who's going to be eating it. So we need some cornstarch. We need some flour. And we need water. Cup of water. One and a quarter cups of cornstarch. This is not going to be one of those things that's incredibly necessary. To be very accurate. There we go. There's our cornstarch. 3 tablespoons of flour. And chances are some of you are probably screaming at the screen right now saying that I put all my ingredients together in the wrong order. That is entirely possible. I know a lot of people like to go dry and then add wet to dry, and I didn't. I just started with the egg because that's the way I do things. You cook your way and I'll cook mine. All right. And what I'm feeling now on the bottom of this bowl is probably why you want to do it the other way, because it's sticking together. That's all right. It'll come out. There we go. See, it's mixed in now. There we go. One, and we just need some black or white pepper. And I thought I had some white pepper. Let's find out. I can't find any, so we'll just use. Now we get creative and we substitute. We need that, and I'm going to need that. Standard, freshly ground pepper. Yeah, that'll do. Could have probably used more or less, depends on you, really. All the pepper does is it just adds a bit of zip to it. And then what it says to do is to toss the beef in the batter. I'm going to leave that there. I might need it again. My hands are clean. Deep fry the strips of beef a few at a time until they're crispy, then set aside. All right, so let's get that on their way. Gonna need to deep fry it, which means I'm gonna need that. Look at that. Now, how much oil was it? 2 to 3 cups of cooking oil. I might be a little bit low on the oil, so I'm going to improvise with some olive oil. That'll do. Olive oil bottles are really useful. Not only are they good for using in a pinch, they add decent flavor a lot of the time to stuff. They are also very good at holding a camera down when you want your camera to be above the saucepan that you're about to use. So let me show you what I'm getting at here. You can see the saucepan there heating up. So bit by bit, we're going to put the beef, just a bit at a time, into the oil. If Donald Trump ever comes to Calgary, it's not quite ready to, it's not quite hot enough yet. If Donald Trump were to ever come to Calgary for to give a talk of some kind, I would most definitely go to see him, because I think he would have a very interesting thing, a lot of very interesting things to say. And love him or hate him, you can't deny that he has been very successful. All right, now it's starting to boil. Now it's starting to fry nicely. I'm going to be doing this for the veggies, using this for the veggies. It's bigger than my largest frying pan. So there we go. Let's pop the other camera on here and you can see what the beef is doing. Yeah, it's starting to fry nicely now. And I tend to get a little bit lazy and a little bit frustrated with waiting for all of this. You got to be careful with that. You don't want to go too crazy, because you definitely want the beef to deep fry nicely and get really crispy. And if you put too much in too quickly, it'll cool down your oil, which will prevent it from making the beef nice and crispy, and you'll have to wait for it to get hot again. So you want to be very, very cautious about that. And, it doesn't have to be like burned to a crisp, but it definitely, you definitely want it to have a bit of crispiness to it. So Donald Trump has gone on to say that he's going to leave office on the 20th of January, Inauguration Day. Probably a very wise thing to say. He's also said that he's going to skip the inauguration event. A very wise thing to do, in my opinion. Especially since I have a feeling that the FBI is going to be hunting him down. Which is incredibly horrendous in and of itself. So the other thing that we need to make for this dish is some sauce. So that says stir fry the veggies until crispy. Add sauce. Bring to a boil for 1 to 2 minutes, remove from the heat. Add the beef, stir to coat with the sauce, and then for the authentic Calgary crispy ginger beef, warm for 1 to 2 hours in the dark, deep flavoring color until, rather, the dark, deep flavor. Because the thing about ginger beef is the flavors need to mingle. And so that's one of the big things here. So so the sauce is a 1/4 cup of light soy sauce, 2 tablespoons of white vinegar, 3 tablespoons of mushroom soy sauce, which basically is dark soy sauce, 1 tablespoon of Chinese cooking wine. I'm going to skip that. 1/2 cup of water, 1/4 cup of sugar, and 1/2 tablespoon or more to taste, again, I guess, of crushed chili. So let's get that on the go. I just happen to have another one of these things here. Let's have a, oh, that's crisping up nicely. I'll show you what I'm getting at there with the meat. I'll put another batch on while I get started on the sauce. There we go. And that white stuff is just a little bit of the batter sticking to it. So we'll pull that out. You can hear it starting to really make a lot of noise, and I'm going to maybe grab a lid in a moment here. I'm going to turn the heat down. Yeah, I'm going to need to do 3 batches, I think. There. So, again, you don't want your oil to get too cold. You want your oil to be just about right. And it's a judgment call on your part as to the temperature you want your oil to be. And trial and error, like anything. I'm just not afraid to experiment with my cooking. So, 1/4 cup light soy sauce. Let's use up the old stuff first. It's in the fridge. On here. I'm going to cheat a little bit. This is not a liquid measuring cup, but it's close enough. Two tablespoons of white vinegar. 3 tablespoons of the dark soy sauce. Brand new. The lid's broken. I have to look into fixing that somehow. And 1/2 cup of water. Quarter cup of sugar. This is where it gets interesting. Because, of course, if you have a wet spoon, a wet measuring cup, the sugar will stick to it. This will give it a nice what's it doing? Interesting that my video keeps refreshing. Gotta get that beef out of there too. All right, so let's pause on the making of the sauce, switch over, and we'll get our next batch of beef in to the oil. This will all look a lot nicer once. As with anything, it looks not as good when you're part way through the cooking process. And I'm getting impatient. So I'm going to do the rest of the beef all at once here. And it should be okay. If it isn't, oh well. I'm the one who's going to have to eat it. So Trump is going to leave office on the 20th. He's going to disappear somewhere. Going to take some time to decompress from the job of being president. And I expect Trump will show up again in around 4 years' time. At which point he'll have another run at the presidency, probably from within a party all of his own, which has probably torn the Republicans to shreds by that point. Because I don't think the Republican Party has any clue as to the nature of the divide between, I'm looking for chili peppers here. I know I've got them. Chili powder. Close enough. I'm going to use chili powder, unless I've actually got chili, crushed chili somewhere, which I do not think I do. So it won't have what you normally see in this one's not going to have the look that the Calgary recipe will have, because when you get this out of Calgary, in Calgary, you can actually see the little flecks of chili, but I'm going to be using chili powder. So I'm not going to use as much because it's much finer than the chilies. So I'm just going to use a little bit. There we go. Might be a little spicy. I guess we'll find out. If you do find that something is a little bit more spicy than you can handle, yogurt, like just plain, boring, regular yogurt, is a good way of cooling it down. And the other thing that you can do is drink milk or eat cucumber with it. And that'll help get it really nicely cooled down as well. Because what makes something spicy is acid. So if you eat something that's basic, like cucumber, drink milk, yogurt, and you know if something's basic because it feels sort of smooth and slimy. Something that's acid will feel rough. Then you can tell. Okay, so we're going to stir fry the vegetables until crispy. Then we're going to add the sauce. Sauce is ready to roll. Strips of beef are being deep fried. And then it's all going to come together. So, I'm going to use some olive oil. I would normally just use basic boring canola oil, but I haven't got any, apparently. Let's do this. Actually helps if you turn it on. I did have it turned on, I just didn't have it hot enough, so we're gonna have to wait for a few moments while that gets hot. I can hear it's starting to sizzle already, so it's gonna come together. It's just gonna take a little bit longer than initially thought. You'd think I'm a neat freak. And so the risk that the left is running with regards to the way that they are talking, the way that Twitter and Facebook and YouTube are going about purging conservative voices now, and Google has now come through and they've removed Parler from their Google Play Store. Parler has been around for years. People don't realize this, but Parler has been around for ages. And Parler is simply Twitter. It's a platform very similar to Twitter. So the only difference is Parler doesn't censor like Twitter does. Twitter is not a platform. It's definitely a publisher nowadays, especially since they've decided they don't even want Donald Trump on their platform now. Facebook is just as bad. So, but the risk that they're running with all of this is they're going to breed more and more and more discontent and anger amongst the conservative crowds because you're marginalizing half of your population. And when you marginalize half your population, all hell is going to break loose. Because eventually, they're going to snap. I can't say I blame them. Because if you are constantly ridiculed, you get denied an opportunity to get your voice heard, you get thrown off platforms, you get people actively trying to ruin your life through false accusations of sedition or through having your bank accounts closed down by your bank because they don't like your politics, by having your career prospects completely destroyed, getting you fired from your job, and because you're no longer allowed on any social media platforms, you can't get a new job, or at least it's incredibly difficult because most job searches are done through social media nowadays. The prospects for violence and for further unrest, and God help us, but violence, and it's going to get worse if they keep doing this, are going to get worse. Much worse. I see that there's a couple of people watching live right now. Hello to the two people who are watching. I am making ginger beef, the Calgary recipe. You cannot get this anywhere else in the world. And I'm stir frying my vegetables here. It's sizzling up nicely. I've got the beef batter deep frying over there on the stove. We'll get over there and we'll pull that out of the oil in just a moment here. This is stir frying these vegetables, and then it's all going to come together. And what I will do is I'm not going to make rice while I'm talking to you, but I'm going to serve this over some rice. I'll take a photograph of the finished dish, and I'll put the finished dish in the thumbnail for this video. So let's leave that to fry up a little bit here. I'll switch cameras. We'll have a look at the deep frying beef. Yeah, that's ready to come out. And once the sauce is done, you'll see it all come together in a nice finished mix, or mélange, as they would probably say in Quebec. So, but the left is going to shoot. What I'm getting at with this whole demonstrations thing is the left is badly shooting itself in the foot, because they're creating the conditions for some kind of, God help us, uprising. And no, I'm not condoning it. I don't want this to happen. I think this is extremely dangerous. But the left is doing it. It is entirely their fault because it could have been avoided. It was 100% avoidable. I'm not condoning violence in any way, shape, or form. I'm not calling people to action. I don't want this to happen. But when people don't see any other option other than to rise up in the streets, that's what they're going to do, because they don't see that they have any other choice. And we've seen this throughout the world. This has happened all over the place. I said earlier today that it looks to me like the conditions are similar to what happened during the Civil War involving Cleopatra, Octavian, and Mark Antony. And the outcome of that was Mark Antony and Cleopatra ended up killing themselves, and Octavian took the name Caesar Augustus, the first Roman emperor. And God help us if Caesar Augustus ends up being Joe Biden. That's not going to happen. It won't be Joe Biden. I think Biden might be the Julius Caesar, except Julius Caesar actually had a brain in his head. Biden isn't even sentient. But one of the final points I'm going to make. So that's all nicely stir-fried. It could probably stir-fry a little bit longer, but I'm getting impatient again. Let's add the sauce to the skillet here. Oh, listen to that. Sugar separated out, so I'm going to have to give this a good stir. And then you can see what's good. Now, as you stir fry this together, the sauce should, in theory, start to thicken up. Now it says to bring this to a boil for 1 to 2 minutes and then remove from heat. So we'll do that. Now I've turned this, the heat is turned right up. We'll let this boil and we'll let this do its thing for a couple of minutes. And then we'll add the beef, we'll stir it to coat the sauce, and then it'll be ready. So there it is, it's now starting to boil. So when you're, as I wrap this all up, when you're out there online and you're starting to get into discussions with people, cooler heads have to start prevailing. Because if they don't, it's just going to make it worse. So the points of advice that I'm going to give you: stick to the subject. Don't attack the person. Keep your wits about you. Don't put up with any BS, of course. But if you never fire unless fired upon, then no one can accuse you of starting fights. That's one of my personal policies. I never fire unless fired upon. Of course, if I'm fired upon, then they get it with both barrels, because I don't back down. And above and beyond all else is, and I'm speaking to the left now, think about what you're doing and stop escalating the rhetoric. This needs to be brought back. Otherwise, it's going to get nasty and there's going to be bloodshed. This is going to be avoidable, but it takes a concerted effort on the part of the morons like, and yes, I'm calling them morons because they are acting in a moronic manner, like Nancy Pelosi, Kamala Harris, Joe Biden, all of Elizabeth Warren. They need to scale back their rhetoric and start actually discussing things constructively. And it is not constructive to call this an attempted coup or any of the other crap that they've called it, because it wasn't any of those things. It was simply, it was angry people who got, and the protest that got out of hand. Okay, so that's, I probably could have gone on longer, but quite frankly, I'm getting hungry. So we're going to add the beef. I'll stir it all in, because you need the beef to be coated with the mixture as well. And then we'll give it a quality check, of course. If you want to be authentic, eat it with chopsticks. I'm going to let this sit for a little while I make rice, and I'll show you the finish. What I'll do, as I said, is in the thumbnail. Come back a bit later on, and you'll see the thumbnail. The thumbnail will have the finished product, the finished dish in the thumbnail, just like my previous video, which the other day where I made Nanaimo bars, and man, are they good. So there we go. So now that's nice and coated up. I didn't remove it from the heat, but that's okay. So we'll just let that do its thing. And we've just made Calgary-style ginger beef. And I'm going to make myself some rice. And I'm going to have a very nice supper tonight. And then I'll start looking into pursuing a libel suit against that lady in Melbourne who accused me of seditious libel. All right. Thanks for watching, everybody. And we'll see it. You'll see me next time.